All right, folks at home, we have the Hearthstone Masters Tour Stop for Seoul, South Korea coming up real soon, and RBG's very own Villain is here with me today, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about himself and his journey through Hearthstone and what it's like to get to travel internationally to compete at such a high level in a game he loves. So, welcome, Villain. How are you, bud?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you could be here for this interview again, as it were. Um,
No problem.
so tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself. You're one of the newer faces to RBG, especially to the Hearthstone scene here. But obviously, you've been playing the game for quite a while. So give the folks at home a little bio of who you are.
Sure. So I started playing Hearthstone when, if you're familiar with the game, when Whispers of the Old Gods came out a couple years back. But I wasn't very competitive back then. I didn't really start getting competitive until about Mean Streets of Kyrgyzstan. It was about the time of Winter Playoff at that year, end of 2017, I believe. Qualified for my first playoff then. It was a different competitive system back then, but I made 5 of those playoffs. What else? Been to a few tour stops here and there. I haven't had a whole lot of opportunities to compete on live stages, but definitely a lot online. Yeah, so just looking forward, hopefully, with more opportunities with RBG in the future to go to more and more live events and give myself chances to prove myself.
Oh, excellent.
Still looking for that breakout performance, but
Still looking for that first big win.
that's right. Yeah.
Well, I hear whispers that this is not your first competitive TCG experience, though. Correct?
Yeah, that's right. I did start with the Pokemon TCG when I was a kid. I played that for about 8 years before I came over to Hearthstone. A lot of people in Pokemon at the time were just messing around with Hearthstone casually, and yeah, I just got hooked on that. I was getting bored at Pokemon at the time, and yeah, the fact that Hearthstone was a lot of the tournaments were online helped a lot too, because Pokemon being a paper TCG, traveling was very costly, and it was every weekend. It wasn't just like Hearthstone, like where you'd have an event once every month or so. It was usually every single weekend you'd have to be out of the house. So
For
got a
sure.
little too expensive, and the game was just getting boring after 8 or so years. So
Right. I mean, would you say that it prepared you pretty well for Hearthstone, though? Just like in the way that the game is played, or any strategy or anything like that? I mean, obviously they're very different, but
yeah, they are pretty mechanically different, but you do learn like the kind of like playing to out kind of stuff, like percentages on how like you are to get this card or whatever. You do learn a little bit about that, but mechanically wise, the games are quite different.
right. As I would expect. But
Yeah.
I mean, either way, it kind of awoke a competitive passion in you. Would you say, or is that something else that might have led you to being, a competitive drive, especially in these card games, or did that come from somewhere else, or did it start with Pokemon?
Yeah, it did definitely start with Pokemon. I played the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG even before Pokemon, just as a kid, but that was like nothing competitive. More of just like a hobby when I was like 8 or 10. I did go to tournaments, but I, never really won, never, got any prizes or anything. In Pokemon, I had already had that taste of competition a little bit once I had made the switch to Pokemon, but it probably took about a year or two before I started realizing that I could really, start winning some prizes in these tournaments. I ended up qualifying for the World Championship 3 times in Pokemon. I won money once in the 2015 Worlds. I won 2,500, but that was my like biggest finish, I think, overall in Pokemon.
Oh, that's pretty exciting. I mean, especially since they're all, I guess I want to say LAN events, but not LAN events.
Yeah, right. In our terms, right? Here in esports, yeah, they would be all technically LANs, but yeah, that was a very different experience too. Getting to see all the same people every weekend, and you do here in Hearthstone, but just not as much travel involved as all. You play a lot from home and talk to people in calls more so than in person.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, especially since the Masters Tour stops are all LAN events. Is there any kind of different dynamic that brings, or is there anything that you miss about maybe the Pokemon scene that the Hearthstone scene doesn't quite have as much? Because you're not necessarily always sitting across from your opponent. Does it take any of the social aspect out of it, or even the competitive aspect?
You definitely did make friends in Pokemon. It was really nice to see them every weekend and all that kind of stuff. But overall, I mean, I think the differences in the games makes me I definitely have enjoyed my time in Hearthstone much more than I did in Pokemon, but that is an aspect you definitely do miss, is seeing the same people, literally every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Is there anything
and
different about when you go to the Hearthstone, LAN tournaments? Like, I know you've attended some of them in the past at DreamHacks and things like that. Is there any kind of a different vibe in the room just because it's all, face to face?
not too much. The only thing I really miss, I really do miss playing around with cards, like physically, like holding them and shuffling them and stuff like that. I often, have a deck of cards just sitting here on my desk while I play Hearthstone, and will shuffle them in my hand. It's just a habit that I miss. But other than that, really nothing too different in like the event experience, I'd say.
For sure. Well, I mean, so let's give the folks a little bit of an idea of what that event experience is like, or I guess what the competitive experience is like for you. So
Sure.
Hearthstone has recently undergone a competitive sort of reformatting, correct?
Yeah, a huge change in 2019 came along. The system in the past used to be such that you could earn points through online tournaments, in-person tournaments, the rank system, and the top players in each region at the end of every 3 or 4 months would get an invite to the playoff, and that would lead further and further on to championships and the world championship and whatnot. Now we've changed to a system which is called the Masters Tour, which is much more simple. It's advertised as much more friendly for newer players. It starts with just open cups online, and if you get a first or second place in one of those, you get to go to the Masters Tour. This year they're having the one in Vegas happened back in June. Korea's in about a week and a half. That's the one I'm going to, and then Bucharest will be in October. Beyond the Masters Tours is the Grandmaster League, which is the premier form of play in this system, where you can once you qualify into it, you just play round robin matches every week, and the top players get to play a playoff, which sends them to the world championship. But it's really hard to qualify into Grandmaster. You have to basically win a Masters Tour or get second.
And
So
that's because it's
tight.
based on prize pool winnings, correct?
Correct. Yeah. In the start of or after Bucharest is over in October, they're going to look at the top 2 prize money earners from the 3 Masters Tours this year, and the top 2 earners will take a spot in Grandmaster from the bottom 2 finishers from this year.
Gotcha.
So it's going to be a while until anybody can qualify into Grandmasters, and that's kind of how they wanted it to start. They wanted to just give it a try with the people they handpicked at first to see how it would work. But so yeah, that's basically the system nowadays. Some people are disappointed by it because Blizzard won't pay for your travel if you win or get second in one of these Master Stores. But it's really geared towards you go to the one in your region, unless you have a team that can send you to the events, right? But
Mm-hmm.
but we're hoping for maybe more events in 2020, so you can go to more without breaking the bank. Ideally.
Right. For sure. But as far as qualifying to make it to these Masters Tour stops, you talked about the Open Cups. Can you describe a little bit of what that's like for the folks at home? Because I know, in talking with you, that you've spent many hours on these.
Yeah, I put a lot of time into them. Almost too much, maybe. But they basically, when you sign up for an Open Cup, you'll submit just your main deck, and then you get to play 2 side decks with up to 5 cards different from the main deck. And then you'll play 8 Swiss rounds, or occasionally they have a single elimination bracket. And you just keep playing that out until you see if you make top 8 and go on to the final. They do have a nice little rule in place now where if you have 6 top 8s, that also counts for a qualification instead of having to get first or second. That's actually how I qualified for Korea. I got 6 top 8s, which is nice for people who grind a lot and didn't get lucky enough to get a win, but put in a lot of hard work and had some good finishes. So
yeah, it does at least reward your dedication there.
For sure, yeah. But they do take a long time. Each in the Swiss ones, a round can take easily. You can expect a round to take easily an hour, on average. So you're looking at minimum around 8 hours for the Swiss rounds, and then maybe another hour or so for the top 8 to play out.
Right.
But,
well, and now
so
you said and looking towards qualifying for Bucharest, that you're having to play in some of the Asian Cups even. So, those are going until what, 4 or 5 in the morning for you occasionally?
Oh, even longer than that. Yeah, the one tonight will start at 9 o'clock, and if I were to win it, I wouldn't expect to be done until maybe 9 or even 10 in the morning. Ish. I mean, it depends on how quick the rounds are getting done, but on average, it take about an hour. But sometimes you can get 2 people playing a really slow matchup, and just because they're not done, everybody has to wait. Because it's Swiss, everybody has to finish the round. So if they're taking 2 hours, that holds the whole tournament up. So
right, some of those mirror matchups can run for quite a long time.
Exactly. Yeah. So that can hold the tournament up sometimes, but.
Gotcha. Well, we definitely do appreciate that dedication, and I'm hoping that the folks at home, as they're hearing this, will get a better sense of why you love Hearthstone so much, why we're so excited to send you to Korea, and why this is such a big deal, because it really is. Like you're saying, there's 2 spots in the whole season effectively that are up, to make it into the highest tier scene, right?
Into Grandmaster, exactly. Yeah, it's really tight competition to get in. The situation right now is such that it's kind of weird. In Vegas, the first and second place players are both from North America, but a weird situation came up where the player who won's name is Dog, and he decided to drop out of Grandmasters, so he's out of the running because he dropped out. His replacement for Grandmaster this year is Gallon, who got second in Vegas, so he's out of the running. So now it's like kind of it's completely wide open for NA, because number 1 and number 2 are kind of out of the way now.
So there's a very real shot that they're going to get a couple of new folks in there from the North American area, or?
Yeah, for sure. I didn't even take really a look at who's leading in Asia and Europe, but yeah, there'll definitely be some new faces in Grandmaster for sure.
Gotcha.
In 2020.
So you talked about, so you obviously got to attend the Las Vegas tour stop.
Yep.
Do you think that experience is going to help you when, here in a week you're over in Korea? Do you think having been to one previously is a benefit to you, or is it kind of just, more playtime experience for sure, but do you feel like that is a competitive edge that you might be bringing with you?
Yeah, I'd say so. Just seeing how the event runs and having it under my belt once will be helpful for sure. Hopefully just hoping for better results this time. But yeah, hopefully the prep work will work out and we'll get better results.
Yeah, I know, especially maybe you can speak a little bit to the folks at home about the current expansion, but also, how those expansions work, because Hearthstone's a very dynamic game, since you don't have people buying paper cards from shops and, owning them in binders or things like that, they're a little more likely to put out cards on a faster rotation. So that's one thing that you're having to deal with right now, as we were talking a bit before the podcast started, that people are kind of scrambling to figure out the new metas, or if there even are new metas.
Yeah, so for context, Hearthstone just released a new expansion 2 days ago, and it's going to be legal for Korea, so there's very little time to find out what are the new cards are good, what's bad, Currently, my thinking is I'm probably going to stick with something that's already been good. So with such little time left before the event, you don't really want to mess around with new cards and try to learn a whole new deck, and it could turn out to just not even be good anyway, right? So I'm looking more towards something that was already good, but yeah, it's a huge deck building challenge. A lot of players like that when a new set comes out so close to an expansion, because they feel that they can get a deck building edge over other players. But personally, I don't prefer that. I like it when metagames are very fleshed out and I can just master a deck for weeks and weeks and weeks. But so it's going to be a little harder for me personally. I'm not super keen on these kind of situations for tournaments, but you got to play it how it is. So.
Right. Well, it will be a bit of a challenge for you then, but hopefully you can prevail nonetheless. So I'm curious, if the deck building isn't necessarily what draws you to Hearthstone, what aspects of the game do you, really enjoy? Like, why are you out here playing the game for 8-9 hours a day or more if it's not the deck building? What calls to you?
What started out was it's similar to Pokemon a little bit, like it being a card game, but the thing that really drew me in when I first started playing was how fast-paced it was. A game of Pokemon, could take 10, 20, 30 minutes in slower matchups, but in Hearthstone, unless you got like a slow control deck, games can be over in 5-10 minutes. like as short as 5 or 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is the difference between Pokemon and Hearthstone is Pokemon didn't have like a mana system per se. Like Hearthstone, you have 1 mana on your first turn, 2 mana on your second turn, and you're limited to what you can play based on how much mana you have and how much mana your cards cost. In Pokemon, you could play any card, any turn, based on certain restrictions. But you are much more free to play your powerful cards. Like your most powerful move in Pokemon could happen on turn 1.
Oh my.
Like your whole strategy could just happen on turn 1. You
Yeah.
could draw from your whole deck, and that stopped becoming that became a little old when turn 1 of the game would take 5 minutes alone
Mm-hmm.
to wait till your opponent drew 30 cards and see what they came up with. So I enjoyed that a little bit more about Hearthstone, that it was a little more what's the word, spaced out, I guess. Like the power plays don't always come down like right away,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little more interesting, I think. And
Lends itself to a bit more of a competitive structure, I would suppose.
Yeah, and the difference too is that with a mana system like this, it's much more punishing when you make a mistake on a turn. Like if you screw up and you don't utilize your mana the best you can. In Pokemon, you can play any card you want any turn pretty much, other than like evolving Pokemon for the most part. And like I just didn't really like the fact that you could do your biggest attack and knock your opponent out on turn 1 pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
In some situations. So little differences like that, but
Gotcha.
Well, yeah, the deck building aspect of the game is fun too. It's just something I've never been very good at. Like I've never been the guy that's making the innovative decks. I've been, I like to take them and try to tweak them as best as I can, and then master them over like a couple weeks.
Right. I definitely feel that. I am only a very casual Hearthstone player, but I very much enjoy that aspect of, kind of learning where the game sits currently and how to navigate through it, but I'm definitely not the one to to do any of the theory crafting or things like that. We'll leave that to the folks out there that are a little better at it. But it definitely is it's a high octane TCG, I would say. It has pretty consistent energy through the whole thing. There's not like one turn where it loses its mind and then you wait 30 minutes for anything to happen again. Like, as a Magic player myself, you can get pretty bored, but Hearthstone tends to hold your attention pretty much the whole way through.
Yeah, I've found that for the past couple of years for sure. There are certain metagames that are more boring than others, but yeah, for the past year or so, I've been pretty entertained by the metagames we've had.
Well, that's excellent. So, speaking a little bit more towards the actual trip to Korea itself, will this be your first time out of the country, or have you traveled before?
I count Canada as kind of domestic, but I've been to Canada a few times, but I've never left North America. Yeah, so okay. I'm pretty excited for my first trip out of North America. Anyway, yeah.
For sure. So it's gonna be, how long of a flight would it end up being for you to get over to Seoul?
So I've got an hour and a half to Toronto first, and then a 14-hour direct flight to Korea. Oof. And then same thing back home. So
gotcha.
That's got me a little bit nervous, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. I'll probably be dead tired from grinding cups the night before anyway, so hopefully I'll just be able to sleep.
Yeah, just get some rest on the plane ride over, and hopefully you can wake up there all refreshed and ready to go.
Yeah, I do have about 3 days in between when I land. Actually, I think it's 4. No, I get there Tuesday. Yes, I have 3 days in between when I get there and when I have to play. So that's a good bit of time to get some rest and beat that jet lag.
Yeah, most definitely. So when you arrive and for the actual event, it's split up by days, correct? And you have to qualify to make it to the second day or the third day?
That's right, yeah. So the first day, on the Friday of the event, we'll play 7 rounds of Swiss. If you reach 4 wins, you get to move on to day 2, where there's another 5 rounds of Swiss. And then the top 8 from that will move on to day 3.
Okay. And then day 3 will simply just be play to the end and see who is number 1 at the time?
Yeah, it does play down to top 8, but what's interesting is top 8 is double elimination. So if you just lose your top 8 match, you're not out of it altogether. You get 1 more chance.
Oh, interesting.
So they do play a double elimination bracket for the top 8, and then single from top 4 on.
Okay.
So that is pretty. That's pretty nice. A lot of players back in the playoff system would be pretty upset when they went like 7-0, and then their 8th place opponent was 5-2, and they would lose, and they just get the same prize as the person that finished 7th or 8th or whatever, right? Like a 7-0 record should be given another chance, maybe, right? It feels kind of bad to just undefeated through Swiss and then take 1 loss in top 8 and it's over. So
Right. Gives you an opportunity to be a little bit more competitive there, I suppose. You know, rewards you for that success.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's excellent. Is there anything just interesting you think you might want to do while you're over in Korea, if this is your first trip too far abroad?
Well, I was gonna look into maybe some sightseeing kind of stuff, but I've heard it's gonna be like 100 degrees every day we're there, so it might be an indoor kind of trip. Stay in and play some Hearthstone
For
before the
sure.
tournament.
There you go. Well, that'll
Yeah.
be a very good time. We're very excited to see it. Where can the folks at home reach you on Twitter, on Twitch, anywhere else that you'd like to plug so that they can stay up to date on this journey with you?
Sure. Yeah, my both my Twitter and my Twitch are just HS_villain.
All right. And, you know, I know in talking with you in the past that your family has always been very supportive. Are there any shout outs or things like you'd like to give, you know, for supporting you on this journey and getting you to this point in your life?
Oh yeah, definitely my parents for sure, for allowing me to stay at home and not have to worry about school and work, and just work every day on Hearthstone and try to get that big breakout finally.
That's excellent, man. Well, we're all behind you. We're rooting really hard. We're hoping to see some awesome success for you. But in general, I just hope you enjoyed the trip. It should be a wonderful time.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to, like I said, get out of the country for the first time and just see what it's like.
All right. Any closing words for the folks at home? Any hype you want to spread for yourself?
Not that I could think of, but just let's save the hype for when I make top 8 or hopefully even better in Korea.
All right, you heard it here, folks. Feel free to tune in online. I'm sure there will be plenty of streams going on throughout the weekend. Again, this is running August 16th to the 18th. Hopefully we'll see Villain all the way through it. But check in on the Seoul, South Korea Hearthstone Masters Tour Stop. Hop in RBG's Discord, hit us up on the Twitter or anywhere else in between, and give Villain lots and lots of love on the Twitter, on the Twitch, wherever you can find him. And let's hope that he has a wonderful showing here. Villain,
Thank you.
good luck, sir.
Thank you so much. And like I said, I'll make sure to tweet out if I get on the broadcast at any point, so you can see that there and check out that.
All right, we look forward to it.
Great. Thank you so much.